Hi YouTube, my name is AJ. This is my first video, so bear with me. The topics that I will be discussing is race and culture with an emphasis on black people. Um, the first thing that I want to say is that I believe DNA testing should be optional or mandatory in all hospitals at childbirth because I believe that this is a right that should not be for the privileged and the rich, but everybody should be able to know who they are. And we have the technology, so why aren't we using it for everybody? Um, and then on to the discussion. The first thing that I want to say is what is it to be black? Um, Black scientifically is a gene. The classification of this gene is negroid. The gene derives from sub-Saharan Africa, or has been thought to derive from sub-Saharan Africa because of the dominance in the indigenous people of this gene. And that's really what black is. Black is a gene. We can't look at black like it's a color. We have to look at it for what it is. It's a gene. And the classification of this gene, the term is negroid. That's why that's why we had the terms of negro and nigger, because it was all a derivative of that classification term, negroid. And that's the gene, or the genetic, that's the gene that we have that we consider to be black. I believe that there's two types of black people. You have your dominant black people and you have your majority black people. And you would think like, okay, majority black people, dominant black people, what's the difference? Well, there's a difference. The dominant black person is the person who could be 20% Asian or Mongoloid, 20% Caucasian white, 20% Australoid Indian, and then he can have 40% Negroid black in him. At the point that he has 40% Negroid black in him, that is the dominant gene in his makeup. Now, obviously, he's 60% diverse with other genes, but that is the largest, that is the biggest concentrated gene in his genetic makeup. At that point, he's black. The majority black person is a little different. The majority black person is just what it is. A person who has 60% Negroid genetic makeup and maybe 40% diversity. At that point, not only is black the dominant gene, but it's the gene that is the majority. It is bigger than it's the majority of the genetic makeup of that person. People maybe try to classify these two different types as light and dark, but I classify it as dominant and majority. And they're both black. I think one of the main problems was the one drop rule, because the one drop rule said if you had a drop of black in you, then you were black. What that did was that pushed people into the classification of black or negroid that may have only had a majority, or I'm sorry, a minority of that negroid gene. And scientifically, it's just incorrect. If that's not the dominant genetic makeup, you can easily say that I have black in me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're black because it's not dominant. But when a gene is dominant, then you can classify yourself as that. If you look up the terms Mongoloid, Australoid, if you especially look up Caucasoid, you would see that even North Africans are considered Caucasian. A lot of people don't realize that. They think that Caucasian is just white, but it's so many other people that classify under that classification because the majority of their genetic makeup is Caucasian. And the reason why I wanted to bring in culture is because I think people get mixed up between culture and race. And race is the physical aspects of who you are, whereas cultural is the spiritual. So, like in Africa, you got white Africans, you got Asian Africans, you got Arabic Africans, Indian Africans, you got all type of people who consider themselves African because they were born in African, they were raised in African, and they know the African cult. They know that cultural society type aspects about Africa. That's what they know because Africa is a place. Um, and I just say that cultural anybody can be or take or be a part of somebody's culture, but everybody can't be a part of somebody's race. And it's really important that people understand the difference between race and culture. And I think it's hard because you have so many people like the Puerto Ricans and the Mexicans who claim who they are based off of a culture and not so much off of a race. Um, and let me see. Culture was